really signals that Washington is no longer experimenting with digital assets. That's what we first heard about 10 years ago, but they're fully embraced them as tools of debt management and global power. And then there's obviously Trump himself. Now, Trump and his family are not just content just to create the legislative framework, which is what they've done to support stablecoin and support the global elite, but they've also entered the market. Probably the deal was, okay, Donald, you get to make some money off of this too, and now reaping extraordinary gains. For example, you may have seen they took World Liberty Financial, WLFI.
The thing that I'm most worried about, because the US does not have the conventional capacity, is that it is going to use tactical nukes as a way of pressing the issue and creating an advantage. And as I've said before, if you look at the papers circulating in Washington right now, everybody's talking about using tactical nukes in a kind of seamless continuum with conventional warfare.
Of course, NATO was created by and for the United States. It is simply an extension of U.S. foreign policy. It controls everything NATO does. It's the primary financier of NATO and everything that it does. And so what this is a political and financial shell game that the Trump administration is playing. It's meant to dupe the Trump administration's own supporters, the people who voted for President Trump. And it's a way of saying, I know you voted me in to stop all of these wars of aggression abroad that we all blamed President Biden for. And we're going to continue all of these wars. But at least American tax dollars aren't being spent on the war, which isn't true, of course. And so all the problems that people voted President Trump into office to solve continue to be, not just continue, but are being compounded by this policy.
And feeling like there was an attempt to blackmail him. He refused any offers of funding and also refused the offer to travel to Israel and meet with Netanyahu, which Netanyahu disclosed in the immediate wake of Netanyahu's death. He talked about this letter, but he didn't say whether Charlie Kirk refused or accepted. I've learned since that he refused. And then beyond that, he was becoming so alienated by this crowd of pro-Israel enforcers that he was moving away from the Protestant church. This is what I've been told. Candace Owens just disclosed this on her live stream. And, he was a Protestant who has a young conservative voice. And, I believe in evangelical Christian.
He was a Christian nationalist by his own words.
Yes. And he was pushing the idea of this Judeo-Christian alliance. And that was like music to the ears of the pro-Israel funders. But now he was starting to attend Catholic Mass with his wife, Erica, and moving in a different direction, what Candace Owens called a spiritual transformation. And the Catholics just don't have that same conceptualization of American Christian nationalism and the Judeo-Christian alliance.
Correct.
This has never been, I don't think it's been reported before. So he was undergoing a transformation, a singular figure in the Trump world, unreplaceable, sort of a unique figure in that world. And he was moving on this question, and there really wasn't anything they could do to stop him, because you couldn't just, I'm sure there would have been an attempt, and there already was, through figures like Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin at Fox News, to attack him and sort of suggest maybe he should be removed. But you can't really just remove someone like that who's built this entire gigantic infrastructure around himself. So we really don't know where things would have gone. But these two stories together, I think, paint a picture of it's a wider history of where the conservative movement itself is going, and the kind of the astroturfing from pro-Israel one percenters to prevent that.
This will undermine Trump's support on this issue substantially. So his good buddy, the vice president of the United States, is a Catholic convert. Candace Owens is a Catholic convert. Mrs. Kirk is a born and raised Roman Catholic. This probably terrified the Christian nationalists, the Mike Huckabee types, and their wealthy American, mainly New York Zionist financiers. Do we know from your sources what Kirk himself thought of Netanyahu? Did he feel intimidated by Netanyahu?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the reason that anyone initially started talking to me was that Netanyahu came out while Charlie Kirk's body was still warm and started lying about him and trying to recast him as his best friend. Now, that's true.
Right.
Charlie Kirk was, until fairly recently, certainly before October 7th, 2023, the most important Gentile asset that Israel might have had today. Possibly more important than Trump, because Charlie Kirk was preaching the pro-Israel gospel to young people, and he was potentially on his way to becoming president or senator, someone very important to Israel. So he, as soon as he starts to make some noises after October 7th about Israel's misdeeds, but particularly about Israel's malign influence in Washington, and then he experienced the pressure from pro-Israel donors like Bill Ackman, Netanyahu enters the picture. And Charlie Kirk, according to a longtime friend of his who I spoke to, considered Netanyahu a disgusting bully who was a manipulator and was fundamentally dishonest. And this stands at complete odds with the picture Netanyahu has tried to paint in not just one, but I think 5 or maybe 6 tweets since Charlie Kirk was killed. And additionally, I think
they've got this sing-song bird-like voice. It's the only way I can describe it. They chirp when they talk. It's really beautiful and pretty, and it's really unique. That's just an aside. But so this gentleman was sitting by the pool, and I was wrapped up in thought and looked over, and there he was. And I saw this cross hanging around his neck. It's very not unusual for Ethiopians. They're a very strongly Christian culture, society. So anyway, I just said, "How you doing? Mind if I ask you a question?" And so we started talking about, I wanted to know what his perspective was on things based on his faith, with regards to how, I'll just say, challenged the world is at the moment. Again, this was a couple months ago. We had a nice conversation, and mostly it revolved around the fact that I asked him to explain to me what Satan was and what Lucifer was, and he did. He explained it quite in depth, more than I knew or could handle at the time. But so we had a nice conversation, parted ways, and then lo and behold, I don't see him again until all of a sudden today. And I said, "Hey, Brooke, man, remember me, John, blah, blah, blah." And he goes, "Oh, yeah." And I go, "It's funny I bump into you today after all that's been going on in the world." And I just find it odd that is the case. So again, we talked a little bit, and I just told him, I said flat out, whether you don't know that you really care to hear my opinion, but the fact is, based on our conversation last time, I have to share with you that I just think we're full on. I think Satan is in the White House, and society has been pretty much under the thumb of Satan and Lucifer as we speak. And I don't see much of a way out. And we talked some more, and he described a little bit more about how things are kind of biblical from his perspective, and the people in the White House and in the finances and the way things are going with the economy and whatnot across the board on so many different levels, with housing, with jobs, with rising homelessness, and et cetera, et cetera. He just kind of compared it to a lot of biblical things, and And I said, yeah, I concur, I agree. We're being captured financially by a very small group of people. And my problem is that we are aiding and abetting it, each and every one of us. And I'm just frustrated that Americans, for the most part, even more than many other societies and countries, are just letting it happen. It's just, tears me up inside. And I said, I really don't see a way out of this, and I don't think it's going to get better before it gets worse. And then I finally left with him. I said, hey, there is one place I take hope, and I described a book to him that is a very famous book by a couple of very, very famous authors called The Fourth Turning. The book is called The Fourth Turning. Fourth as in number 4, fourth turning. And I said, this is what gives me hope, is how these two authors, one has passed away, but the other one's still living. This book's been around quite some time. It's very famous, very well known, very well researched. And the authors basically say that everything that we're going through right now we've gone through before and is completely predictable. And it reminds me of a saying I've had for many years that I came up with one day just while meditating, and it's that quote, "In life there are no mysteries, only surprises." Basically what that means is that we could see all this coming. We just have to be honest with ourselves as to why these things happen. And that's the truth of it as far as I'm concerned, is that there are no mysteries. Everything's very plain, obvious, even unknown science, until the day we finally come around to realize that the only reason we were surprised is that because we gave in to our willful ignorance, when actually we knew all along, we knew all the time that these things something was inevitable, was going to happen. So, and here we are with all this. And so the book describes that the fourth turning happens over and over and over again. And what it means is the first generation is experiencing a really fascinating life, healthy, robust, sharing, growth, etc. The second generation begins to settle into this and get complacent. And then the third turning is where we are right now, where it all completely falls apart. And it means completely, like utter destruction, self-destruction, nuclear war, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where we are now. And the authors back this up with just centuries and centuries of history that play out exactly like this. So predictable. Just like I said, there are no mysteries in life, only surprises. Well, so the fourth turning is when we finally come through this because of the next generation that is among us now, which is the very young generation. Those 8, 9, 10, 12 years old now, et cetera, 13, 14, that are going to one day say enough is enough. We're not doing what you've done before. It's not moving forward. We're moving forward. So I said, this is the only thing that gives me hope, that everything they've proven in the past, these authors, is that indeed we are in the third turning, and the fourth turning is going to be our salvation. Not for me, I'll be gone, but the fourth turning will finally pull us out of this. So, why is this even worth listening to? What does this matter? It matters because, I think for me, that's what gives me hope. Not for the present, not for the very near future. I think we've all been complicit in completely being complicit and enabling and empowering all the corruption, literally Satan in our lives right now, literally Lucifer in the White House right now. But the reason that there's hope, and the reason my diatribe here has been worth listening to at all, is simply to remind us all that the younger generation, as flawed as they are with their efforts at times, and even immature and inaccurate, we need to stop and remember that they actually are doing the hard work, even through their imperfection. It's always been this way. Look back at all the moments in history where it's been generations that saved the day, that people literally fought against a younger generation, a younger crowd coming in and changing things, when actually they are the ones that actually have pulled us through. Look, the Vietnam protests, etc. I could I could quiz you all, who's ever listening to this right now, and ask you the names and ages of everyone who signed the Constitution of the United States. And you, first of all, you wouldn't know the names, and second of all, you wouldn't know the ages. So I'll just leave that there for you to be a little curious about. But again, this thing is, even as imperfect as they are and as flawed as they are, forgive the younger generation, and most importantly, support them and enable them and empower them, because eventually they're going to get it right. They're going to make mistakes, but you're not going to fix it. I'm not going to fix it. Nobody we know is going to fix it. We're all a bunch of freaking losers, evidenced by the world we've created all around us, and you haven't changed and won't change and won't stand up to. Instead, you're entitled. You think you deserve what you have, which is not really true. But so there you have it. So to get at the end here, as flawed as it is, remember to support the protesting and the whatever the words I'm looking for, the ones who are standing up now in so many ways of all the younger generations. And I'm not talking about different groups that have their ideologies, and certainly not religions and political parties. I'm talking about the raw, innate drive to protest and stand up against the overbearing reach and pressures and control of a burgeoning elite that is in our government now. The few people that are trying to control power and money, the way they're going to switch the dollar to gold and the Bitcoin and have it be a central, a CBDC currency that they can control digitally 24/7 and control your life with it, etc. I'm digressing and rambling a little bit just to make the point again that we are up against some very sick people who are literally satanic. I'm talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Alex Karp. I'm talking about Peter Thiel. I'm talking about Elon Musk. I'm talking about Eric Schmidt and Jeff Bezos and many, many, many others. But it's actually a relative few that are in the bowels of satanic occurrences, and they are trying to, and they are getting away with what they are doing thus far. So have an open mind to what other countries, other nations, other economies are trying not to let themselves become subject to and corroded by. So all this to say that this not accidental bumping into Mr. Brooke, this gentleman I spoke of at the beginning, it was no accident. Here it was that during this great time of tumult and the things that we've been seeing happening all around us ever since Satan took office and took it over from the previous Satan, because they're all satanic. Understand that to be the case. This is not a political party thing. They're all satanic. They are all moving this way because of what we've enabled. As one gentleman in the previous video clip I've shared with in the past said, something to the effect of, every election is worse than the one before. And then he goes on to say that the military is just a murdering arm of that government that's in power. And this is where we are today. We're assassinating people in boats out in the middle of an ocean of another country, and on and on and on. We are producing color revolutions in countries clear across the world, fomenting uprisings where there were none before. And so here we are. So the two messages are, hopefully we have faith in the fourth turning that will help subsequent generations. And then remember, when it doesn't look like they're accomplishing much and when it looks like they're foolish, remember, those crazy youth are the ones that actually are going to save your ass. Not mine, unfortunately. All right, that's it.
Good night, and good luck. Remember, you wanted this. It's okay. You're okay. Get up.